So I just didn't really enjoy that line of business that much, and decided I wanted to work for a real company and have a real job, and was quite fortunate that I was able to make that move. And I think that whenever you talk to people who've been successful in whatever field they're in, whether it's academics, whether it's business, the arts, sure, you gotta be smart, you gotta work hard, you gotta be talented, but you also have to have a little bit of good luck along the way. And as I think about it, my transition from being an investment banker to being the chief financial officer of Santa Fe Energy was a huge leap. I mean, I didn't even know what I didn't know. But I was talking to the chief executive officer, had about a 1-hour interview, and he happened to have been at Chevron and been the head of their exploration program in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and when he was in the Sudan, made the big discovery, Chevron's big discovery in the Sudan. Well, it just so happened that after college, I worked for a small consulting firm and had spent 2 or 3 weeks in the Sudan, in Khartoum, Omdurman, and I don't think he'd ever run across anybody who had, spent time, and certainly not this young woman, spent time in the Sudan. So, that was just one of those connections that's pure luck. Okay, well, maybe it's not pure luck. As a 22-year-old, yeah, I'll go to Sudan, why not? But you do have to have some serendipity. And of course, the other thing is that the fellow who had been the CFO before me had actually been at First Boston and had gone to Wharton. And the CEO is thinking, okay, Wharton MBA, First Boston, it worked last time, let me try it again. So it's kind of lucky too, frankly. The fact that just so happened my predecessor had same pedigree. And so I got to Santa Fe, and boy, the first day I realized I had no clue. The head of internal audit came in to talk to me, very nice man, had 35 years experience, just about the same age as I was, and asked me, what was my philosophy of internal audit? And I see a lot of blank looks. That's exactly how I responded. Maybe a little more concerned. But investment banking stood me in good stead, because in investment banking, you got to be quick on your feet. You got to have the right answers. You got to somehow make the conversation with the client work so that they think you're smart, which may or may not be true. And I said, well, Ken, I really like to know, what's your philosophy? Turns out we have the same philosophy. But it was just great, and I think that one of the reasons I was successful at Santa Fe, even though I had no idea what I didn't know. Remember, this was back in the days when investment bankers, were masters of the universe. And this is kind of embarrassing, but when I got there to Santa Fe, I kind of was talking to people, and wow, these people are really smart. Huh, they're so smart they could be bankers. Which, if you think about it, just shows you how, what blinders I had on. But what I found was I'm just a naturally curious person. I like science, and the oil and gas business is very science-driven. It's, you're drilling 2 miles underground and then maybe another 2 miles horizontally, and how do you know what's there, and how do you know what kind of drill bit to use? And I mean, there's just a lot of science and engineering goes into it, and I really like that stuff. And so so I asked lots of questions. And, I just thought, the oil business is great because, when I was in investment banking, there was this sort of sense that the men sort of wondered, well, but you're a woman, why do you want to be an investment banker? What are you doing here? Whereas the men at the oil and gas business were very happy, they were very excited that I was asking questions about the project, and how many wells could you drill, and how could you ramp up production, and what kinds of rates of return would there be? And so I talked to people, I said, it's amazing. Investment banking was much more difficult as a woman. I tell you, the oil industry, much more of a meritocracy, and you get treated for who you are and what you are. And then somebody said, yeah, you were the CFO. These fellas needed the money. They wanted their projects approved, so of course they're going to answer you. But the reality is, people like to talk about what they do. They're proud of their work. And if you show an interest in what they're doing, they're going to like that and respond very favorably. So don't be shy. Ask them. If they're too busy, they won't tell you, they'll come back because they'll want to share it with you. But the key is that you've got to be intellectually curious. You always have to ask why. Don't think about whatever your job is narrow, and you just got to get your job done. You need to understand how your job fits into the overall equation. And so if you're working at a company, you need to understand what drives value. You need to understand why are some of your competitor companies so successful. And you need to understand how can you, even just doing your job, how can you think like an owner? Because let's say, for example, you're in accounting, and your job is to do these 10 reports every month. And why? Well, because we've always done them. And that answer is not good enough. The question is, how do these get used? How can I do them in a different way so that they're more valuable? What's the objective of this exercise? So that then you can improve upon it. Because if you want to be successful in life and get satisfaction out of your job or whatever you're doing, you got to constantly be growing and constantly be improving. And so that's the way I like to paraphrase it. Think like you're an owner. If you were owning this business, how would you do what you're doing differently? And so I have actually had a great time working in the oil business since '97. Santa Fe got bought by Devon. Oh, I left part out. So remember I had the conversation with myself about investment banking, you get paid the big bonus, then you decide that you're going to leave, then the boss talks you into staying. Then the next year I had the conversation again, and I was prepared this time, and so I quit. And I did some consulting work in between. My dad insisted that I call it a sabbatical. I call it catching up on life.